Hello, I'm Ali Jennings and welcome to this How to Make an Expression Portrait video tutorial. Here we have a series of 9 pictures taken by Ed Godden in our home studio, and basically he got the subject to pull a series of different expressions that we could then lay out into this expression portrait. Here I'm going to show you how to process all 9 images at the same time within Adobe Camera Raw or ACR, and then lay them out onto this grid format ready for printing at A3. So we'll get straight into it. First thing I'll do is just close down the final image, and then if I open up the 9 raw images that we're going to use in the expression portrait, and I can do that just by going to File, Open, or the shortcut on a PC is Ctrl O or Option O on a Mac. Once we've got our open dialog window in front of us, we can then just highlight the 9 pictures that we want and click Open to open those directly into Adobe Camera Raw. So once it's open, we've got our 9 images over on our left hand side in our image bin, and we can scroll through those just by clicking through the thumbnails. And if we want to make adjustments to all of the images, as we do in this case, all we need to do is just click Select All. Now any adjustments that we make will be applied to the whole rather than each individual image. Over on the right hand side, before we get started, we can see this red clipping going on, and that just shows that we've got some highlight clipping within the image, and you can make sure that your shadow and highlight clipping is switched on by just hitting U and O on your keyboard. Alternatively, if you just go out to the histogram up at the top right hand corner, we can just click on the small arrows to switch the shadow and the highlight clipping on and off. Now if we have a look at the histogram itself, we can see the shadow areas are here on the left hand side, and they're quite small, whereas over on the right hand side we've got our highlight, and we can see that's actually going off the histogram. So we know as we're making our adjustments we want to just draw back the exposure slightly just to reduce the highlights and also reduce the amount of clipping that we can see here in the areas covered with the red. So the first thing we want to do is just to correct our white balance, and we can do that using the white balance tool that you'll find in the tool palette at the top. Shortcut for that is just I. Once selected, just click into the background and you'll instantly see a lot of that highlight clipping will disappear, and it'll also correct any colour casts. So once done, we can see the colour cast is corrected. We've reduced that highlight clipping, but we've still got quite a bit of clipping going on around the face and the neck there. So we know our first adjustment that we want to do is just to reduce that highlight clipping, so we're going to reduce the exposure. So if we go down to our exposure slider, and we're just going to reduce that right down to about 0 or minus 0.85, and we see that all of that highlight clipping has pretty much disappeared. Now we can see from the image we don't really need to adjust the fill light, and that'll just lighten the shadow areas. So if I increase that, you can instantly see the effect that that has. Our blacks is up at +5. I'm just going to increase that slightly to about +10, and that just adds a little bit more contrast. Our brightness is at +50. I'm just going to reduce that down to about +40, and I'm going to take our contrast up to about +35. And you see instantly we've got a lot more impact coming into the picture. So if I have a look at it before and after, and you can really see the difference that that's made to the image already. Now I've also just increased the clarity and the vibrance and left the saturation as it is. Now the vibrance is a great slider. It'll actually boost skin tones really nicely without affecting the brighter colours within the image. So once I'm happy with the adjustments for this picture, I can then go through all of the others just to check that all of the exposures are matching up. Now quite an easy way to do this is just to get your pipette, drag around the screen in the white area, and just check out the RGB value over on the right hand side. Now here I'm getting about 126 to 130. I'm just actually going to increase the exposure a little bit and take that up to about 136. So now when I drag the pipette across, I can see that over here on the RGB values I'm getting values of about 136. Now if I click down onto the second portrait and again drag that pipette around, I see that I'm down at about 120, 125. Again, I just want to increase the exposure slightly, and again try to get that to about 136 as well. Now when I click between the two, I can actually see that the exposure for each of those is pretty much the same. So I'll go on to the third image. Again, have a look, I'm about 208 for this one. If I actually click into the numeric box within the exposure, then I can just use my cursor keys to brighten up the image, and that saves me having to go from the exposure slider back over to the image to check the values. So if I just use the up cursor key, just take that up to about 136. Here I can see a little bit of highlight clipping coming in, so I'm actually going to increase the recovery slider just to reduce that highlight clipping. Okay, I'll leave you there to get on with the other images, and once you've finished, just click Select All to select all of the images within Adobe Camera Raw, click Open Images, and that'll open up all of those pictures into Photoshop Elements.